These Australian brands broke every rule in business and branding, and they built some of the most successful companies this country has ever seen. Today, I want to walk you through all 5 of them, what they got wrong, what they got right, and the one lesson every new business owner needs to take from each of them. Because here's what I've learned after 23 years in brand strategy: brand identity matters enormously, but it is the last thing that kills a business. Please stick around till the end, because the 5th brand is the one that changes how you think about all of them. Now, let's start with my all-time favorite and a graphic designer's worst nightmare. Let's start with Jim. Jim's Mowing. Everyone in Australia knows Jim. He's a complete success story. The bearded bloke on the side of the green trailer, the hand-drawn portrait, the colours that make every designer in the country quietly wince. Jim Penman started mowing lawns in 1982 with $24 and a second-hand mower while completing his PhD in history at La Trobe University. He was not trying to build a brand. He was trying to pay his bills. For 7 years, he ran the business as a sole trader. Then in 1989, he franchised it, and that changed everything. Today, Jim's Group has over 5,000 franchises across Australia, New Zealand, UK and Canada, with an annual turnover approaching the $400 million mark. Now, here is the branding reality. The identity is clearly DIY. Jim's own portrait, a stylized one-color illustration. It's plastered on every van, every trailer, every piece of marketing. The colors aren't the best. The design breaks almost every rule in the book, but it somehow worked. So how did this become one of Australia's most recognizable brands? Because the brand was never the logo. The brand was Jim. A real person, a real face, a real name on every single van in your neighborhood. In a service industry where trust is everything, where you're letting a stranger onto your property, a human face is more powerful than a perfect logo. Jim did not build a brand identity. He built a trust identity, and that was enough. The lesson from Jim's Mowing is not that design does not matter. It is that trust matters more. And if you can build trust on scale through service, consistency, through reliability, through showing up the same way every single time, the logo becomes secondary. Jim himself said it: if you chase money first, it will not work. I am very passionate about service to customers. The brand was the service, not the logo. Now let's start on another great Australian favorite, Harvey Norman. Here is something most people don't know about Joey Harvey. By the time he launched Harvey Norman in 1982, he was already a highly experienced retailer with decades behind him. He and Ian Norman had first partnered in 1961. They built the Norman Ross chain to 42 stores with an annual sales of $240 million before selling it in 1982. Harvey Norman was not a new business owner starting from scratch. He was a seasoned operator who knew retail inside and out. And that experience is a significant part of why Harvey Norman succeeded. 316 stores globally, 44 years of trading, one of Australia's most recognizable retail brands, and a brand identity that looks exactly as old as it is. The red, the blue, the bold font, the serif, the Harvey Norman wordmark that has barely changed in 4 decades. In 1982, those colors commanded attention on a catalog cover. In 2026, they look like a brand that forgot to evolve. So how did Harvey Norman survive? 3 things: real estate, supplier relationships, and Jerry Harvey himself, the personal brand. The stores are enormous, the supplier lock-in is significant, and for decades, Jerry Harvey was one of the most recognizable business personalities in Australia, regularly appearing in his own advertising and commenting publicly on the economy and making news. The personality was the brand. Sound familiar? Jim's Mowing? But here's where Harvey Norman becomes the warning rather than the success story. JB Hi-Fi launched in 2000. The good guys have been pushing hard for years. Both look more modern, both feel more relevant, both speak to a customer that grew up online and have very different expectations of what a customer experience should look and feel like. Look, I'm sure Harvey Norman's numbers are still very significant, but the trajectory probably tells a different story. An aging identity in a rapidly modernizing market is not a competitive advantage. It is a slow leak. You do not notice it until the bucket is almost empty. The lesson from Harvey Norman is that legacy buys you time, but it does not buy you immunity. At some point, the brand has to catch up to the market, or the market moves on without it. CPAP Direct. This is one of my personal favorites. It perfectly illustrates an example of a brand that almost does not need a consumer brand at all. CPAP. Continuous positive airway pressure. I drive past one of their locations every day, and every single day, all I see is crap direct. And that is the problem with acronyms. You cannot control the narrative. People will make their own assumptions, and if those assumptions are negative, you lose before your conversation even starts. So how does a brand called CPAP Direct have over 30 locations across Australia and become the country's largest independent CPAP provider? Because they don't really need a consumer brand. The business was founded in 2014 by Bryce and Michelle after Bryce was actually diagnosed with sleep apnea himself and experienced a complete lack of industry support. They built the business around a patient-first philosophy, and they grew it through the most powerful marketing channel in healthcare, referrals from medical professionals. When your GP or sleep specialist gives you a service provider, you go. You don't Google alternatives. You don't compare logos. You do not care about what the acronym stands for. You trust the recommendation of the person who just diagnosed you. CPAP Direct built their brand in a clinical network, not in the consumer market, and that is a completely different game. The lesson from CPAP Direct is that the right distribution model can make your consumer brand almost irrelevant. It only works if the product solves a genuine problem and the service is exceptional. Most businesses can't replicate this model, which is why most businesses can't afford to ignore their consumer brand. Another oldie, Lube Mobile. I remember seeing these vans driving around when I was a kid, and I was asking my parents what lube was. Lube Mobile was founded in 1982 by David, Paul, and Mark. As a single van mechanic business, the idea was genuinely disruptive, a mechanic that comes to your car instead of you taking your car to the mechanic. They grew to a fleet of hundreds of vans and hundreds of mechanics across Australia. In August 2019, Bridgestone acquired the business for approximately $45 million. Huge. Now the name, the negative connotation is obvious. Every person who has ever seen a Lube Mobile has had exactly the same thought I had as a kid. And by the time anyone noticed, the brand was too established to change. The legacy was the trap. But here's what the Lube Mobile story actually proves. A genuine disruptive service model can carry a problematic name for decades. The convenience of coming to you was so compelling that the customers used the service in spite of the name and because of the brand. In 2023, Lube Mobile rolled out a modern brand identity, new logo, new vans, new website. The name stayed because at $45 million in acquisition, the value of the name was part of what Bridgestone bought. The lesson from Lube Mobile is that a truly innovative model gives your brand a head start that poor naming cannot immediately undo. But it also shows you the ceiling. At some point, the name becomes a story rather than a barrier. And when Bridgestone had the resources to modernize everything around it, that's exactly what they did. All right, the last one, Anytime Fitness. This is one I want you to pay the most attention to because I feel like Anytime Fitness is the one brand in this video that did all three things right. It was founded in 2022 in Minnesota by Chuck Runyon, Dave Mortison, and Jeff Klinger. The idea was simple and genuinely disruptive. Affordable, 24/7 gym access to a smaller community-focused space. No big box, no expensive infrastructure, just a key fob and a local gym you could access anytime you wanted. The original branding, a stick man that looked like it came straight out of Microsoft Word clip art in 2002. I saw it, I'm sure other designers did, and thought the same thing. This looks like it was designed in 5 minutes. And they launched 29 franchises before they even opened their first corporate gym. The model was so compelling that the brand identity almost didn't matter. Today, Anytime Fitness operates over 5,500 locations across all 7 continents. In Australia, they launched in 2008. First location was in New South Wales, and they have grown to over 600 clubs nationally with more than 730,000 members. But here's what separates Anytime Fitness from every other brand in this video. In 2021 and 2022, they underwent a major global refresh, adjusted the color palette, refreshed the visual identity, and expanded the positioning around holistic wellness rather than just a gym. They modernized the brand without losing what made it recognizable. The stickman unfortunately evolved. The colors changed, but the feeling, the accessible, community-focused, always open, stayed exactly the same. They did what Harvey Norman has not done, what gyms has not done, what CPAP probably doesn't even need to do. They asked the hardest question in branding. How do we evolve without losing the people who already love us? And they got the answer right. So here's the lesson. What do gyms, Mowing, Harvey Norman, CPAP Direct, Lube Mobile, and Anytime Fitness all have in common? They have all proved the strong business model, the right timing, genuine service delivery, and a product that solves a real problem can overcome almost any brand weakness for a period of time. But they also prove something else. The brands that built their success on a model and timing alone, Harvey Norman is the clearest example, are the ones under the most pressure today because the model advantage erodes, the timing advantage expires, the competitive landscape catches up, and when it does, the brand is either an asset or a liability. Harvey Norman's brand is a liability right now, a 44-year-old identity in a market that has moved on. Anytime Fitness's brand is an asset, a refreshed identity that carried the equity forward and positioned them for the next decade. Now, here's the question I want you to sit with. Would these brands succeed if they were launched today? Gyms, Mowing? Possibly. The trust model and local service delivery, they still work. But in 2026, you're competing with platforms like HiPages and Airtasker that make it easier than ever to find a local tradie. The gym face alone would not cut through. Harvey Norman? I don't think so. The retail model is under enormous pressure. Launching a big box retailer today with an aging identity in a market increasingly dominated by online would be extraordinarily difficult. CPAP Direct? Yes, of course. The referral-based healthcare model is largely immune to consumer marketing trends. The product solves a genuine medical need and the clinical network drives acquisition. Lube Mobile, yes. If anything, the convenience model is even more relevant today than it was in 1982. But the name would never get past a modern brand strategy session. Anytime Fitness, absolutely. The model, the positioning, and the refreshed brand all hold up in 2026. The honest conclusion in this, what worked in 1982 was enough then. Today, it is the starting point. These brands succeeded because they had timing, model innovation, and genuine service delivery on their side. In 2026, those things are table stakes. Every competitor has access to the same tools, the same platforms, the same AI, the same design resources, which means the brand positioning, the identity, the story, the feeling you create is now more important than it has ever been, not less. The only thing that built these businesses that AI can't really replicate is what they delivered to real customers in real moments over real decades. The trust, the consistency, the experience of being looked after. And that's what brand equity is. Not a logo, not the colors, the accumulated weight of every promise kept and every customer served. So if you're starting a business today or in the middle of building one, learn from these 5. Get the model right, that is first. Deliver the service, that is second. And then before you touched the brand identity, the logo, the colors, before you pick any of that stuff, get the strategy right. Because in 2026, you do not have 44 years and 314 stores to fall back on. You have one chance to make the market understand why they should choose you. You need to make it count. Which one of these 5 brands do you think has the best shot of surviving in the next decade? And which one do you think is in the most trouble? Drop it in the comments below. I will read every single one.